as well here. Liverpool against Chelsea at Anfield, 5:30 UK time on Saturday. Interesting. Infogol go under 2.5 goals. The Pinnacle price for that is at 1.833. The likes of Lukaku, Havertz, Mount, Salah, Jota, Mane on show. Would over 2.5 goals be worth a look? Jake, I'm thinking at twos. Just hold that thought for a second. Infogol have it in the balance, really. 40% chance of Liverpool winning. Chelsea, surprisingly, actually less than that, 32% chance. I'm sure you'll explain why, Jake. Liverpool have won their last 7 league games, of course, straddling from the back end of last season into this season. Chelsea are 3.750 second favourites for the title, which is not really surprising when you consider that they are the European champions and they have bolstered their squad and they look really good. And Thomas Tuchel seems to have sorted them out defensively as well. Van Dijk against Lukaku appears to be one of the biggest storylines as well. Biggest being the operative word as well. They're both massive. Can Liverpool's forwards exploit this strong Chelsea defence? Harvey Elliott, is he going to retain his place? So many different storylines and narratives, but basically the whole crux of it, we could talk about Van Dijk against Lukaku and all that kind of stuff. I don't think we're going to. Our listeners want to know exactly where they can find the value in the betting market. And Jake, I think you've probably got a good idea. This is a great game to try and get your teeth stuck into.
It is, yeah. It's a difficult one to kind of assess because we've got obviously Liverpool. You're not in that sort of weird period last season without the best players where they looked sort of not an average team, but slightly below the top 4 level. They're much more like the team that we saw a couple of years ago that romped to the title. And Chelsea looked like a serious contender. So it's an early season, huge 6-pointer in effect. Just quickly touching on the Van Dijk, Lukaku. If I'm Lukaku, I'm pulling on to Matip. Forget Van Dijk. Just try and pin Matip. But yeah, Liverpool will be much smarter, much more different in their approach to Arsenal. Arsenal just sat off, drop deep. Liverpool will play a high press, try and force Jorginho and Kovacic into releasing the ball earlier. Whether that'll work or not, I'm not too sure. But they will also play a high line, Liverpool, which you're going to have the likes of Werner will probably play in this one, I think. Lukaku obviously is like lighting off the shoulder. It's tactically it's going to be fascinating. You've got in the dugout, you've got Klopp and Tuchel who've taken a very similar managerial steps from Mainz to Dortmund and then to bigger European clubs. It's fascinating. But what I would say is that I expect defences to come out on top. Salah, Jota, Mane, they are going to create a few chances between them. The same goes for Chelsea's front three. But ultimately, I think the strength of these two sides is predominantly in the defence. It was the defence that led Liverpool to the title so sensationally, and Chelsea, it's their defence that took them to the Champions League final and ultimately pulled them back into the top 4. I've thrown the numbers around from last season under Tuchel. I think it's about 0.68 expected goals against per game in the Premier League. So far this season, they've allowed 0.34 to Palace, 0.68 to Arsenal. So they're continuing that trend of just literally limiting their opponents to next to nothing. And Liverpool, they again limited Norwich to nothing apart from a couple of set piece chances right at the very end after the game was dead. Burnley had a few early opportunities, but after Liverpool got the first goal, that was again just sort of game over in a sense. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting one to keep an eye on. And the Infogol model is sided with Liverpool, 40% chance of a Liverpool win. We've got Liverpool rated slightly better than Chelsea heading into the season, factoring home field advantage, and that's why we've got a small edge of value in terms of backing Liverpool to win. Personally, I'd steer clear of backing anything in that 1x2 because I think it's just such a tightly contested game. I'd be very, very tempted to back the biggest price in the 1x2, and that's the draw. I think the draw is a serious runner. 3.4 is the draw on Pinnacle. I think that's probably where I put my money in that market. I think that, like I said, these two will cancel each other out. It usually happens when the best teams are playing each other and they're both at the very peak of their powers. Neither team wants to give an inch. Neither team will want to lose this game.
No, that's the key, isn't it?
Yeah, and the only niggling doubt in the back of my mind is that Klopp will play a high press. and I can just see Rudiger pumping one into Jorginho and Jorginho just hooking one round his shoulder over the channel, and Lukaku or Vernon running through on the high line and the high press. But then you've got Van Dijk to chase him down, whereas you didn't have that last season. So, I guess I'm sort of talking my way around settling on a bet.
That's what this is about, because this is why it's an interesting game, Jake, for anybody who's going to be able to watch this match or follow this match, because they are going to cancel each other out with their strong defenses. And we talk about, all the players I've just reeled off, Lukaku, Havertz, Mount, Salah, Jota, Mane. But in essence, they are great at the back. So it's difficult. We're relying heavily here on both defenses turning up as well, aren't we? That's the whole thing. If either side, and it only takes one mistake from one of the immense centre halves or defenders for either side, and we could quite easily see, a couple of mistakes, and all of a sudden it's 2-0 and it blows all our bets out the water. But
you factor in that Robertson's going to be back as well. He came on off the bench last week after his injury, and you've got a full strength Liverpool back four or back five if you include Alisson. And there's rumours that Fabinho might be back in as well after his time off for bereavement purposes. So all of a sudden you've got a really strong back six there for Liverpool, and obviously Chelsea's back 5 and 6 is just really strong in general. I think if I was going to back something in the 1x2, I would take the draw. As I've said, we've got Liverpool rated slightly above Chelsea, but literally there's a minute difference between the two on our ratings. These two are the most evenly matched teams on our ratings in the entire Premier League. So that, basically what we're saying with our percentages is that if these two met on a neutral venue, both would have an equal chance of winning, but because there's home field advantage, Liverpool have a slight edge. I'll be taking the draw, and then I would also be looking at under 2.5 goals. I think that's my preferred bet in this one.